Today we're going to make a Sawtooth Star block. This is a good block if you are comfortable with your 1/4" seam and have done maybe some piecework with squares and rectangles and maybe half square triangles. The way that I make my Sawtooth Star block is this unit right here is called a flying geese. And that's the most accurate way that I have found to piece this block. You can do 2 half square triangles side by side, but a flying geese block, a flying geese unit, to me is the most accurate. So that's how I'm going to show you how to do this block today. So you're going to need some fabric. You'll need 2 fabrics. Make them kind of contrast so that you can clearly see what you're doing. You're going to need a 6.5" square. You'll need 4 3.5" squares of your background fabric. You'll need 4 3.5 by 6.5" background pieces. And then you will need 8 3.5" squares of your main fabric, the same as your center. You can do your center different if you want, but for this tutorial, I'm just going to use 2 fabrics. For this first step, I'm going to show you how to make your flying geese block, or your flying geese unit rather. So I'm going to take, let's see, I've got 8 of these. I'm going to mark the back of all 8 of them. So I've just got just a little straight school ruler, and I've got a marking pen. This is a heat erasable, so when I hit it with the iron, it'll go away. So I'm going to lay my ruler so that it's right at the corner, right at both corners. And I put my pen down at the corner so that when I mark it, it'll be in the right place. So then I draw a little line all the way down, and that marks my center, and that's my sewing line. So I'm going to do that to all 8 pieces. Now that I've got all 8 pieces marked, I'm going to lay out my 4 3.5 by 6.5 pieces. And I'm going to take 4 of my marked pieces and I'm going to lay them there just like so. I'm going to line them up on the edges, and I'm going to start sewing here in the center, but I'm going to have my point going toward the middle. Now I'm going to take these all 4 to my sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing here in the center at the point, and I'm going to sew on the line, or maybe a little bit to the outside of the line, just a little tiny hair, because you lose a little bit of fabric when you flip it. We're going to do what's called the stitch, cut, and flip method to make these flying geese. There's another method where you can cut the triangle and line it up. I like this method better. It wastes a little bit of fabric, but my flying geese come out really nice every time. Okay, so if you've got a single hole stitch plate, now's the time to use it. If you don't, it's fine. You might just want to use a leader, just a little scrap of fabric to, sorry, my cord was caught, just to anchor your threads so that you don't, your threads don't get loose, your corners don't get caught down in your machine. But I like my single hole stitch plate. And if you sew just a hair to the outside, you'll get much better results with your flying geese unit. And if you'll notice, my stitch line is just barely to the outside of my drawn line that I've got there. Now I'm going to take each of my units and I'm going to do I've done the stitch. Now I'm going to do the cut. So I'm going to cut roughly 1/4 inch to the outside. Make sure you cut off the outside, not the inside. You'll be angry with yourself. And then I'm going to take it to my iron and I'm going to press it out like that. All right, now that I've got all 4 of my flying geese units pressed one way, I'm going to come back and get my other 4 pieces of fabric and I'm going to line them up with the other side of that white piece of the background. And make sure your V's go to a point, otherwise you'll be disappointed and angry with yourself. And you'll have to use your seam ripper, which you need anyway, but if you can avoid it, that's always a good thing to prevent mistakes. All right, so now I'm going to take these to the machine and I'm going to sew them. I'm going to start at the point like I did the first time. And once again, I'm going to sew just to the outside, but this time it's going to be over to the left. So once again, I'm going to cut off the outside part about 1/4 inch for my seam, take it to my iron, and I'm going to flip it out and press it, and look, there's your flying geese unit, and we'll make 4 of them. Now that we've got our flying geese made, I'm going to lay all my pieces out. It's kind of like a 9 patch because you'll have 9 separate little pieces. That's my 6.5 inch square, and there's all my flying geese pieces. Then I'm going to put my background corner pieces in. See how pretty it is already? Looks so nice. Okay. Now I'm going to take this row and I'm going to flip it to here, and this one and flip it here, and this one and flip it here. And then I'm going to sew them together, and then I'll come back after those are stitched and I'll do the same thing with this side. And so I'll have 3 rows, and then we'll take them to the iron and press them. Just a little tip, when you're sewing these flying geese together, if you'll notice, this is where they cross, where you sew the 2 pieces together. If you'll make sometimes you have to fudge a little bit if your sewing is not perfect, which mine never is. It's close, but it's never perfect. I make sure that I see where my needle and my stitches are gonna go right through the middle of that little X. And so when I get to the other end and I unfold it, my point is almost perfect. Now that I've got my block sewn into 3 pieces, I'm going to take it to the iron and I'm going to press this row so that my seams go out. My seams go out, and the same on this one, but on the middle one, they're going to go in. And that way, when I sew my 3 rows together, the seams will nest inside one another. Now I've got all of my seams pressed nice and flat. I'm going to take one of the pieces and flip it over. And I'm going to make my seams nest inside one another. You can slide them until you feel them kind of click into place. They don't really click, but they make a nice little satisfying snap where they fit into one another, so that when I sew it and open it up, everything meets at that little corner right there. So that makes me happy. And I don't pin a lot, but I do use some little clips, and so I'll put a clip right there, and then I'll come down here, make them match up. You can feel it when they're on top of each other, or when they're too far apart, or when they're right in the right place. And then I'll take it and clip it, and I'll make sure that my seam goes right over that little X. I took this to the iron and I pressed my seams, the 2 that I just sewed, these 2 right here, and I pressed them to the inside just because I thought that's probably where the least amount of bulk would be. And you should have a little bit of 1/4 inch at each of the points on your Sawtooth Star, and that's your seam allowance for sewing your blocks to each other or putting some sashing in them. These are great blocks. It's a very old style block. You can use it with all sorts of fabrics, with Christmas fabrics or some fall fabrics or whatever, and you can put together 3 or 4 or 5 of them, make you a nice little table runner, whatever you might want to do with them. And that's the Sawtooth Star block.